The fluorescent lights flickered above the narrow hallway of Forward Operating Base Hawthorne, casting a pale glow over the dust that clung to everything. First Lieutenant Emily Carter moved slowly through the cafeteria line, her eyes heavy from 3 nights without real sleep. The air smelled of bleach and overcooked rice, mixed with the faint sting of disinfectant that never seemed to fade. Her uniform still held its sharp creases from Langley, her boots too clean, her posture too exact for a place that lived in the dirt. She balanced her tray carefully, scanning the crowded room filled with men and women who had just come in from the field. Their sleeves were rolled, their faces rough with exhaustion. Laughter, echoing between bites of cold chicken and instant coffee. She caught glimpses of sand-covered gear tossed at their feet, rifles propped against the wall, patches worn from time in the desert sun. Compared to them, she felt out of place. A newcomer, whose hands had known more keyboards than carbines. She had been trained to think fast, decode faster, and stay invisible. Here, that invisibility made her feel smaller. The hum of the air conditioner mixed with the low murmur of conversation somewhere near the back. A generator sputtered, its rhythm steady and unrelenting. Emily took a seat alone near the corner, the tray clattering softly on the metal table. She forced herself to eat, though the taste barely registered. Her body ached from the flight and the long hours of analysis before departure, her mind still replaying the encrypted messages she had broken days earlier. The patterns had kept her awake long after midnight, long after 2:30 in the morning, long after her body had begged for rest. She looked around the cafeteria again, watching soldiers swap stories about the morning's mission, their laughter carrying that mix of relief and fatigue only those who had seen combat could share. She didn't envy them. She respected them. And yet, deep down, she knew her role mattered too. Not every battle was fought under fire. Some happened behind screens, in rooms lit by computer monitors, in silence that could save lives. She pushed her food aside and sat a little straighter, her expression calm and unreadable, ready for whatever came next. The cafeteria buzzed with noise and energy, a strange mix of exhaustion and celebration that filled every corner of the room. It was just after a successful mission, and the air seemed charged with leftover adrenaline. First Lieutenant Emily Carter stepped through the doorway, balancing her tray and scanning for an open seat. Her eyes swept past rows of crowded tables, where soldiers traded jokes, smacked each other on the back, and devoured lukewarm meals like they hadn't eaten in days. She kept her head high, though she still felt like a visitor in someone else's world. At the center of the room sat a group of Navy SEALs, their uniforms streaked with dust and sweat. Lieutenant Commander Jake Reynolds leaned back in his chair, boots stretched out, his voice cutting through the noise. The men around him were still running on the rush from their pre-dawn operation. They laughed loud, swapping details of a raid that had already turned into legend before breakfast. Emily recognized them instantly from the mission brief she had reviewed just 2 nights earlier. They had no idea she had spent most of that night decoding communications that had shaped their success. As she walked past, one of the SEALs called out, "Hey, Professor," looking for the Wi-Fi password. The table erupted in laughter. Another added that maybe she was here to write a report about their meal choices. Reynolds smirked, the corner of his mouth lifting as his gaze drifted to the combat patch on her shoulder. "Nice patch, Lieutenant," he said casually. "Must be hard-earned from all those battles behind a screen." The tone was easy, teasing, but sharp enough to draw blood. Emily stopped, her tray still balanced in her hands. Around her, the laughter softened, sensing a shift. She met Reynolds' eyes, calm but unflinching, and replied evenly that every soldier serves in their own way. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. The words hung in the air longer than anyone expected. A few nearby soldiers turned to watch, their conversations fading. Reynolds gave a short laugh and leaned back again, pretending not to notice the silence settling around them. "Sure," "Lieutenant," he said, "some of us just serve where it actually matters." Emily held her ground, her face unreadable, her spine straight, the weight of the moment pressed around her. A quiet challenge between two very different kinds of warriors. She didn't look away, didn't retreat. In the hum of fluorescent light and the smell of coffee gone stale, the room seemed to pause. Everyone knew something had shifted. The respect she hadn't been given yet, she was about to earn. For a long moment, Emily didn't move. The tray in her hands felt heavier than it should have, the metal pressing against her palms as the sound of laughter faded into quiet curiosity. Every head in the room seemed to turn her way, her heart beat steady but slow, the way it did when she was about to brief senior command on live intelligence. Years of discipline told her to let it go, to turn away and find another seat. But another voice inside her whispered that silence had a cost, and she had paid it too many times before. Her mind flashed back to 3 nights earlier, the flickering light of a computer monitor casting shadows on her face as she sifted through encrypted chatter. The intercepts from the Reaper UAV and the SIGINT array outside Hasaka had been irregular, a shifting pattern of frequencies that didn't match enemy routine. She had cross-referenced coordinates, checked movement data, and realized just after 2:30 in the morning that the enemy had fortified the SEAL's planned entry route. It had taken every ounce of focus and courage to escalate that data up the chain, to convince her superiors that the risk was real. The reroute order had gone through minutes before the team deployed. Now she stood in front of those same men, alive because of that call. And they had no idea. The thought burned quietly beneath her calm exterior. Her laptop bag hung heavy against her shoulder, a reminder of the endless nights, the choices made in silence. She could walk away again, or she could draw a line. Emily exhaled slowly, setting her tray down at the edge of the SEAL's table. The scrape of the metal legs against the floor cut through the quiet. She pulled out a chair, her movements deliberate, controlled. "Mind if I join you, Commander?" she said evenly, her tone polite but firm. Jake Reynolds looked up, surprise flickering behind his grin. The room stilled again, waiting. Emily sat, posture straight, eyes steady. For once, she wasn't going to let the truth stay hidden behind clearance codes and quiet professionalism. Some lines needed to be spoken aloud. Reynolds leaned back in his chair, still wearing the grin of someone confident in his place in the world. "So, Lieutenant, what kind of top-secret PowerPoint are you building today?" he said, his tone light but edged with condescension. A few of his teammates chuckled quietly, their laughter echoing through the cafeteria. Emily didn't react. She reached for her laptop bag, setting it gently on the table beside her tray. The sound of the zipper sliding open seemed louder than it should have been. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic, every step deliberate, as if she had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times before. She inserted her CAC card, the computer's green light blinking. As it verified her clearance, the cafeteria's hum softened as nearby soldiers began to sense the shift in tone. The screen glowed against her face as she entered her encrypted password. "Her finger steady?" She spoke calmly, her eyes still on the laptop. "Operation Iron Dagger," she said. 3 o'clock this morning. Your team almost walked into an ambush at the northeast corridor. The words hit the table like a round fired into the dirt, dull but heavy. Reynolds straightened slightly, his grin fading, his expression tightening into skepticism. "That's classified," one of the SEALs said under his breath. Emily nodded once. "Yes, it is." She turned the screen toward them. The Reaper UAV feed showed the compound in grainy infrared. Red dots flickered near the edge of the northeast wall. Heat signatures. Movement patterns. Her voice remained steady, clinical, detached. I picked up frequency hopping in the enemy's radio chatter. It was irregular, too organized for local militia. The pattern matched a deception tactic we saw in Afghanistan 3 years ago. They were baiting your approach. The men leaned in. The cafeteria seemed to shrink around the table. She pointed to a set of bright spots on the map overlay. PKM machine guns here. Lead of a 7 are top information 40 in the PKM. RPG 7 positions here. Overlapping fields of fire. They had reinforced the route less than 6 hours before you deployed. Her tone was factual, not accusatory. I flagged the anomaly and escalated it through Colonel Elaine Morrison. She authorized a last-minute reroute to the southern corridor at 2:45 a.m. Reynolds blinked. His team exchanged looks, murmuring to each other. One of them muttered that they thought the route change had been random. Another said they had assumed command just wanted to test flexibility. Emily folded her hands on the table, meeting Reynolds' stare for the first time. "You weren't supposed to know," she said quietly. "That's how it works. You act, we protect. That's the job." A long silence followed. The faint hum of the refrigeration units filled the space where laughter had been. Reynolds looked at the map again, his jaw tightening as the realization settled in. If she hadn't caught it, if that report hadn't gone up the chain, 15 men would have walked into crossfire before sunrise. He glanced at his team, then back at Emily. The arrogance in his eyes was gone, replaced by something harder to define: respect. Maybe guilt? Maybe both. Around them, the cafeteria seemed frozen. Even those not part of the conversation watched in silence. The sound of boots on tile, the clink of utensils, all had vanished. Reynolds finally spoke, his voice lower than before. "You're saying you saved us?" Emily shook her head slightly. "No, Commander. I'm saying I did my job." The simplicity of her answer hit harder than any boast could have. Reynolds sat back slowly, his hands folded on the table, his expression unreadable. The moment stretched long and quiet, and in that quiet, the balance between them shifted completely. For a moment, no one spoke. The stillness in the cafeteria felt almost sacred. Jake Reynolds' expression had changed completely. The smug confidence was gone, replaced by something quieter and heavier. He looked down at the satellite images still glowing on Emily's laptop. The grainy infrared map that had nearly become his team's grave. The realization settled like a weight across his chest. He straightened in his chair and took a slow breath before standing. "If you hadn't caught that, Lieutenant," he said quietly, "we would have never made it home." Emily stayed seated, her posture still perfect, her hands folded in her lap. She met his eyes, her voice steady. "Just doing my duty, Commander." The words carried no pride, no resentment, only truth. Around the table, the SEALs shifted in their seats, some looking at their hands, others at the floor. The sound of boots scuffing against tile broke the silence. For the first time, the room that had felt like his turned toward her. From the far side of the table, Master Chief Mark Daniels stood. His uniform bore the marks of long years in the field, his face lined and sun-worn. He looked at Emily for a long moment before speaking, his voice low and rough. "Ma'am, I've lost brothers because intel came too late or not at all. What you did, that's the difference between body bags and homecomings." He paused, then straightened his back. Every eye in the cafeteria followed as he raised his hand and rendered a sharp salute. Emily blinked, stunned. In 10 years of service, she had briefed colonels, advised analysts, and handled encrypted data that shaped entire missions, but she had never been saluted by a SEAL. The air around her seemed to thicken as Reynolds followed the Master Chief's lead, bringing his hand up in a perfect salute. One by one, the rest of the SEALs rose and stood at attention, their faces solemn. No one said a word. The hum of the refrigerators filled the space between them like the sound of a distant heartbeat. Emily rose slowly and returned the salute, her throat tightening. "Thank you, she said softly. Her voice wavered for just a second, betraying the exhaustion she had held back for days. When she lowered her hand, Reynolds nodded toward the empty chair beside him. Sit back down. Lieutenant, I think we'd like to hear how you found what our entire planning team missed. She hesitated, then sat again, the tension replaced by a strange sense of belonging. Her laptop screen still glowed between them, a cold light in the otherwise dim room. She explained in simple terms how she had noticed the anomaly in the intercepted data, how the enemy's encryption had been modified from a standard AES pattern into something less predictable. She walked them through the long hours she had spent reconstructing it, the moment she realized the breach was deliberate, and how she made the decision to escalate it immediately. The SEALs listened closely. The same men who had mocked her now leaned forward, asking quiet questions about frequency bands, communication intercepts, and data latency. There was no sarcasm this time, no edge, only genuine curiosity and respect. The cafeteria around them slowly came back to life, the clink of trays and low voices returning. But the energy had shifted. Soldiers at nearby tables watched her as she spoke, some nodding slightly. Their expressions softened. When she finished, Reynolds rested his arms on the table and looked at her with a faint, almost tired smile. You probably saved more lives in that one night than most of us do in a year, he said. She shook her head, brushing off the praise. We all do our part. Commander. Reynolds nodded once. Thoughtful. Maybe. But not all parts are equal. He reached out his hand, and she took it firmly. The handshake lasted only a moment, but it carried more weight than words ever could. Around them, life at the base continued. But in that corner of the cafeteria, something fundamental had changed. The cafeteria slowly returned to its rhythm. Conversations resumed in soft tones, the clatter of trays blending again with the hum of air conditioning. Yet something felt different, lighter somehow. The teasing, the noise, the old invisible hierarchy had faded. In its place was a quiet respect that lingered in every glance toward the corner where Emily Carter and Jake Reynolds sat. Reynolds leaned forward, elbows on the table, his voice calm and sincere. He told her he wanted her in the next mission debrief. He admitted that her insight could change how his team planned from now on. Emily nodded once, her voice even but touched by a quiet satisfaction. She said she would be honored. As she rose to leave, the men at the table stood with her. No one made a show of it, but each of them met her gaze with a look that spoke volumes. Around the room, a few soldiers paused their meals and nodded subtly as she passed. Some whispered to each other, their tone not mocking this time but respectful. Emily could feel the shift in the air. That rare kind of change that doesn't come from orders or speeches, but from witnessing something real. The cafeteria door closed behind her with a soft, metallic thud, leaving behind the smell of coffee, disinfectant, and a faint trace of redemption. Outside, the sun struck her full in the face, hot and relentless. The air shimmered above the runway, the sound of rotors beating in the distance as an HH-60 Pavehawk prepared for takeoff. A medevac team moved quickly across the tarmac, their movements practiced and precise. The smell of jet fuel mixed with sand filled the air, thick and familiar. Emily paused near the edge of the flight line, her boots sinking slightly into the dust. She watched the helicopter lift slowly, then tilt forward into the bright sky. She thought of Colonel Elaine Morrison, her mentor from Nellis Air Force Base, and the words she had spoken during training. Courage is not always loud. The colonel had said, sometimes it is the quiet voice that insists on being heard. Emily felt those words settle inside her like truth rediscovered. The weight she had carried all week began to ease. Her fatigue was still there, but it no longer felt heavy. She breathed in the dry heat, the scent of fuel and dust, and let it fill her chest. For the first time in days, she smiled. small and private. Out here, victories were never celebrated with banners or cheers. They were measured by the lives that made it home, and by the silence that followed when respect finally replaced doubt. The base was quiet now. The kind of quiet that only came after long days and harder nights. Inside the intelligence workspace, the hum of servers replaced the clatter of the cafeteria. Screens glowed in the dark, their light reflecting off the metal walls. First Lieutenant Emily Carter sat alone at her desk, a mug of cold coffee beside her. The soft whir of the air system filling the silence. A small desk lamp cast a warm circle of light over her laptop as she typed her report, the keys clicking in steady rhythm. The room smelled faintly of dust and machine oil, a scent she had come to associate with focus. Her inbox chimed. A message from command appeared at the top of the list, recommendation for commendation. The subject line read. She stared at it for a moment, her fingers resting on the keyboard. Then she smiled faintly and closed the notification without opening it. Recognition was never the point. She had done her job. That was enough. She leaned back for a second, eyes drawn to a small photo pinned beside her monitor. It showed her and Colonel Elaine Morrison at Nellis Air Force Base, smiling under the desert sun. She remembered her mentor's words as clearly as if she had spoken them that morning. Courage is not always loud. Sometimes it is the quiet voice that insists on being heard. Outside the window, the horizon stretched black and endless. Somewhere beyond the perimeter, the faint rhythm of helicopter rotors pulsed through the night air. Steady and distant. Emily listened for a moment before turning back to her screen. Her reflection flickered across the glass. Framed by the dim light of the monitor, she adjusted her posture and continued typing, the words flowing easily. Now, not every warrior carried a rifle. Some carried knowledge, data, and the quiet weight of responsibility that others never saw. They were the ones who fought in silence, the ones who built the safety others stood on. Emily's fingers paused over the keyboard one last time before she saved the report. The servers hummed on, constant and tireless. As the camera lingered on her calm face, beyond the glass, the night stretched wide, alive with the faint echo of flight and the promise of another day.